So I'd like to solve problem 11.1a. Problem 11.1a, it says on July 1st, year 1, Denzer Industries issued $40 million worth of bonds. So if we're going to say face value of the bonds, also known as par value or stated value, is going to be 40 million. And the bond market interest, or also called yield, or yield to maturity, is 7%. So we're going to put 0.07 here and make it a percentage. The other term for that, of course, is the effective interest rate. I'm sorry, 7% was the stated rate. The market rate was 8%, so 0.08 here, and stated rate, or stated rate, coupon rate, also known as coupon rate, and on purpose that I'm trying to mention all these different terms. It's 0.07, 7%. And the proceeds, also it's a market price of the bonds, are 37,282,062. Now, how they came up to this number, we'll talk about later. It is kind of beyond the scope of this class, but I will go through it anyway. So, interest is paid semi-annually. Alright, so note that this is the bond issued at a discount, because the stated rate of 7% is below the market rate of 8%. So the amount of the discount in this case is the difference between the face value and what they actually receive in cash, which is $2,717,938. So at maturity, I'm going to save this file here. So at maturity, they receive, even though they're obligated to pay out 40 million in the end of the bond's life, they actually get only 37,282,062. The other piece of information we need is the actual term. It's 10 years. All right. So what happens on July 1st, year 1? What is the journal entry they make? Well, they get cash, and the amount of cash is the proceeds, 37,282,062. They have to credit bonds, so this is going to be a debit. They have to credit bonds payable for the full stated amount, which is 40 million. And the difference is the bond discount, which is of course 2,717,938. Now, note that bond discount reduces the amount of liability, at least initially. So the actual total liability is still 37,282,062, because what will happen is that on the balance sheet you'll have a liability for the stated amount of 40 million reduced by net of the bond discount to 717,938, which is 37,282,062. All right, so this is the part one we answered. Journalize the entry amount of cash proceeds. Now, how do you actually account for this bond over time? In reality, you have to account for it using what's called effective interest method, which is beyond the scope of this class. And so your book kind of uses a shortcut for doing that. And that's before the advent of availability of Excel in the computers. That's how people used to do it, because it is kind of it's a rough estimate, kind of a shortcut. And that what's called amortizes the discount, meaning the discount over time, the bond liability, which is the net bond liability currently. So we may want to put it net bond liability at issuance, bond stated value is 40 million. Less discount, 37,280. I'm sorry, 2717938, and so net bond liability is in fact this plus this, right? 37,282. So no, but what happens is that over time, as you accrue interest on the bond, you need to capture this discount. It needs to be what's called amortized into bond liability, and you need to pay. You need to essentially, over time, need to pay in the 8% effective rate, not the 7% which you stated. All right. So, how does again, GAAP requires usage of the effective interest method, which. So again, the bonds over time, what has to happen is the bond's net liability of 37,282,062 should be brought up to 40 million. How do you do that? You do it via amortizing the discount. And the effective interest rate method is what GAAP requires. We don't cover in this class. So we're going to use a shortcut called straight line discount or premium amortization. We're going to do a premium problem later. Well, how do you do that? Well, this bond is 10 years maturity. However, it says that here that this is semi-annual. So in fact, interest is paid. You're gonna have 20 payments. So what you gotta do is you need to have 20 journal entries. So you need to take discount amortization. What you take is you take the amount of the discount, divide it by 10 years, and then divide it again by 2. So you have what this works out to be. Just double check I did this right. Should be over 20. Yes, I did this right. Which ends up being $135,897, roughly speaking, right? For every period, you need to add to interest expense to recognize higher interest, so that liability goes up. All right. So, what is the total amount? This is discount amortization. Now, what is the cash? Every period you make what's called a cash coupon payment, which is equal to the stated amount of interest for half a year, right? Remember that these amounts that we hear here, 8% and 7%, respectively, are for a year. But you're going to have not 10 payments, but 20 payments of half of interest. So cash coupon payment, in this particular case, is stated rate divided by 2 times the face amount, which is 1.4 million. So that's what you're going to pay. But the market is basically telling you, you only pay me 1.4 million. Well, you need to pay me more because there is this actual higher interest that we actually want of 8% a year or 4% per 6 months. So then the interest expense is calculated by adding the discount amortization to the actual cash payment. So we need to do 1.4 million and add 135,896 to it. So that's your interest expense, 1,535,896. What I did is that I took 1.4 million and subtracted the negative amount, just so that's addition. So interest expense will be 1,535,896. That's a debit, as of course you know, right? Then you have cash will be a credit, right? Because that's what you pay every 6 months, and the amount of cash payment, of course, is 1.4 million, and the difference is the bond discount amortization, which is going to be a credit. It's going to be credit, right? Remember, the discount originally is the debit balance, but by crediting the bond discount every period, you are going to, over time, bring it down to zero. So by the time the bond matures in 10 years, you will have no discount left, because the total amount of bond liability will be just equal to the stated value. Now, the nice part about the straight line bond amortization is that this is the journal entry doesn't change from period to period. It stays exactly the same from period to period, and you don't, essentially the answers to part A, part B, or question 2 is the same. What is the total amount of interest expense for year 1? Well, total interest expense for year 1 will be the same interest expense for year 2, and so on, because remember, the entry doesn't change. Now, this is semi-annual, so you need to times it 2, and so the interest expense for the year is, in this particular case, 3,071,794, roughly speaking. Now, part 4 of the question asks, will the bond proceeds always be less than the face amount of the bonds when the contract less than the market value of interest? The answer to that is yes, except at the very end, right? In the very end of the bond maturity, what you do is you amortize discount to 0 in the end of year 10, and there. Like I said, the bond payable will be 40 million. Now, what happens at maturity is you need to, pay off 40 million, and they'll credit cash and debit bonds payable, because there will be no more discount account, because it will be zeroed out because of the amortization. Now, how did we actually, part 5 of the question asks, so how did we actually come up with the 37,282,062, right? How do we know that was the price? Well, that was calculated using present value and present value method, and this is done. Let's do this here. Calculation of proceeds. So you need to calculate present value of the maturity value first, and that is the maturity value. Remember, is 40 million. And you need to discount it using the stated rate of interest, market rate of interest. In this particular case, is 8%, but over semi-annual period. So you need to take 4%, taken to the power. Remember, this is present value calculation, so you need to discount over, in this case, the maturity period of 10 periods. But remember, this is semi-annual times 2, right? So the present value of the maturity value in this particular case is 18,255,478. Then you need to calculate present value of the interest of the coupon payments, and the present value of the coupon payments. Coupon payments are this 1.4 million. That's an annuity. So we can use the present value function. So I'm going to say minus PV, because otherwise it gives me a negative number. The rate of interest, of course, is always market rate divided by 2. Number of periods will be 10 times 2, and payment, of course, we said is 1.4 million, so I'm going to put that in, and so that gives me the present value of the coupon payments of 19,226,457. If you add that up, that will actually give you the exact proceeds that you received. Hopefully, will 37,281,934. We're roughly off a little bit from, the difference is probably the rounding, because they may have used the tables to calculate their number. But that's basically how you calculated the proceeds on the basis of Appendix 1. In this class, I'm not going to ask you to do that, because the present value calculations are really beyond the scope of this class. But that's basically how you answer question 11.1a. And thank you for listening.